Hello and welcome to another ID116 lecture. Take two. Hello and welcome to another ID116 Fundamentals of 3D Design video lecture. My name is Jon Simpson, and in this video we will be discussing UV mapping. UV mapping is the process through which we take a two-dimensional image, such as this C3PO's box or this Coca-Cola label, and we apply it to a three-dimensional object. That process requires us to basically cut our model up. We call this marking seams, and then we lay the model flat. So as you can kind of see as the animation demonstrates, this is what we will be doing to our 3D model. We're going to begin with a simple cube so that we can begin to discuss the importance of UV mapping and how we do it. We're going to create a new material to go on this cube, so we can do that a number of different ways. But we'll start by just creating a new material, clicking the new button. We're going to come over and we're going to change the base color from white to image texture. Now under image texture, we're going to create a new image. Let's go ahead and call this UV grid. I've been doing this several times, so I'm going to add a number, 005. The color doesn't really matter because we're going to do generated type, and we're going to say UV grid. Now say new image, and that has created this UV grid from within Blender to show how my UVs are laying on this particular object. I'm going to hop over to UV editing. Now this is a different layout, and I've got mine kind of set up a little different. But the two main windows that you need to be concerned with are your 3D viewport here, where you can view your objects, and this new window over here, which if I hover over the panel type, it will tell me it's the UV editor. And this is where I can edit and modify how my UV lays out on my object. Now, currently I do not see my texture or my material in the UV editor, and I want to change that. So I'm going to click on the little button down, and I'm going to find that material that I just made, that UV grid. Very good. If I select everything over here, we will see that the corresponding faces appear over here. Select, and let's select this top face here. So go into face selection mode by pressing 3, and I'm going to select that face. Now if I modify this face in the UV editor, such as if I scale it by pressing S, we'll see that the texture scales. The object itself does not, just the texture. I'm going to right click to undo that. If I come in and I grab a vertex, just go ahead and make sure that my proportional editing is turned off. I use that quite a bit. Sometimes I leave it on. It can be kind of a pain if you don't know it's on. Remember, that is the O key if you want to toggle that. So I grab this vertex, and if I want to move it, I press G like I would in the 3D viewport, and now I can begin to warp and twist how that UV is going to appear. If I want to constrain it to either the horizontal or the vertical, I will press X for horizontal and Y for vertical. Now the purpose of the UV grid is to help us make sure that our UV, our texture, is laying properly and not being stretched or anything like that. So starting with a UV grid is a great way to make sure you're on the right path. Sometimes my shift key doesn't function properly. In the next example, we will UV map the cereal box. So this is just a standard cube that I adjusted to match the sizes of a cereal box. One thing that I did do was I made sure that I had applied my scale when I was completed. If I don't apply my scale, it will affect how my UV maps appear on the object. So, as with modeling and modifiers, scale is very important. Remember, that is Control A, and then you apply which one you want to apply. All right, so let's begin by going ahead and applying the UV map or the UV grid to our cereal box. So over in my Materials tab, of course, I'm simply going to click the arrow down button, and I will find the material that I am looking for, which is UV grid. Okay. Now we can see already that it is not applying it properly. If I tab to go into edit mode and press A, we can see over in the UV editor, the image editor, that it is still using the previous UV map from when it was a cube, so everything is the same size. That's not what we want. So in the 3D viewport, I'm going to switch over to edge selection mode by clicking 2 on my keyboard. And I'm going to select the edges where I want to cut my model. And I just do that by holding Shift while selecting the edges that I wish to cut. All right. I think that looks pretty... Nope, I kind of messed up already. No, I did okay. Never mind. I lied. It's fine. So learning which edges to cut is part of the fun and part of the process. One thing that I try to do is I will look at cardboard boxes and I will see how they are constructed. And I generally try to cut my models along the same areas. Once I have marked my seams, I'm going to cut them by pressing U and tell it to mark seam. Once I've marked the seams, they will appear red in any time I go into edit mode, and that tells me that there is a UV map seam there. Let's go ahead and press A to select everything again. Press U to bring up our UV mapping panel or pop-up. And we have lots of choices here. I would recommend going through and playing with these and seeing how things work. It is beyond the scope of this tutorial. I will say that unwrap angle-based works really well, as does unwrap minimum stretch. In this case, I'm going to use unwrap angle-based. And we can see right away that it has changed the shape of the UV map to more closely match the actual object. And now all of my squares are all nice and even. There's very little distortion, and I'm pretty happy with where it is. Now, since my UV grid fits pretty well, we're going to go ahead and change this material from the UV grid to one that I had already made, and it is my C3PO's box. The C3PO's box is a really simple material. It's just the principled BSDF with the C3PO JPEG that I sourced off the internet. All right, now right away we can see that that is not what we want. That is not what we want at all. So this is where UV mapping really comes in handy. I'm going to tab to go into edit mode. A to select everything. We'll come over here, we'll press A to select everything. First thing I'm going to do is rotate it so that it matches up with my image. And it would be helpful if I could see my image over here. So I'm going to switch from the UV grid to my C3PO box. Much better. If you don't see this little drop down, the image drop down, remember, middle mouse button allows you to scroll back and forth. Let's go ahead and rotate this. I want to hold control because I want to constrain to the proportions. So 45-degree angles. G to move, and we're just going to go ahead and begin to move it into place. I think right there looks okay. Now we're going to come in and deselect everything. There we go. Just get everything right. Let's select it again. Now, I want to get this as close as I can because afterwards I'm going to start moving these individual vertexes into place. So let's switch over to vertex mode by pressing 1 on my keyboard. G, and it's very important that I don't go up and down. I don't want to do this by any means. So I'm going to press X on my keyboard. And I'm just going to bring that right up there. Looks pretty good. Marquee drag to select all of those vertexes. G to grab. Press X so I constrain to the horizontal. And as I'm doing this, I can see the image line up in the 3D viewport. GX. GY, because I'm going the opposite direction now. And we're going to cut that one off right there. Let's tab out of edit mode. And we can see we've got a really nicely textured C3PO's cereal box. In our last example for UV mapping, we are going to create a soda can. So again, here is a really super simple model that I created. At this point, any of you are 100% capable of creating this model. And we're going to wrap this soda can texture around it. I was in the wrong viewport. So we're going to take this very simple model and we're going to wrap the Coca-Cola texture around it. So here's my Coca-Cola texture. It is currently showing here, but it doesn't show here, and the reason for that is I have not yet applied the texture to the object. I should say material, not texture. There, Coke can. It took me a minute. Oh, goodness, that is definitely not what we want, is it? To fix this, again, we are going to tab into edit mode, and I'm going to begin by selecting this top ring. So let's select that. We'll press Alt, and it selects all the way around. Oh, that's awesome. Fantastic. Next, we will select the ring across the bottom. Press Alt and Shift. That's going to let me add to my selection while selecting that ring. And then last but not least, I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to select one of these edges running from top to bottom. U to bring up our unwrap menu. Mark our seams. Press A to select everything. Press U to bring up our UV mapping window. And again, unwrap angle based. Now that we have completed marking our seams, it is time for us to adjust our UV maps. By pressing 3, I'm going to jump into face selection mode. If I select this face and then press L, I will select all linked faces. That means all of this island is now selected, and I'm just going to move that right there. Deselect everything. Come over here, press L again. And that's going to select all of this linked island, G. And then we position it. Last but not least, we select a face here, press L, it selects all of those faces. We'll begin by moving it into place with G. Let's go ahead and scale on the horizontal, so I'm going to press X. If I hold Shift, you'll remember it's going to slow things way down for me. Let me be a little more accurate. Scale Y to scale on the horizontal. Let's scale just a little bit more. Oops. Okay, I need to press Y. Make sure I scale just on the Y. There we go. And in she goes. GY to bring it up just a little bit. All right. There you have it. That's UV mapping. At least a very gentle introduction to it. There's so much more to learn. I highly recommend you go and read the Blender manual covering UV mapping. But this will get you started, and even though it's kind of an intimidating idea, keep at it and you will master it. In the next video, we're going to learn how to combine UV mapping with texture painting so that we can paint directly onto our models. Hope you're excited for that one. We'll see you then.